Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall. It's the water saving podcast brought to you by CCW. Who are we? Karen, who are CCW?
We're the voice for water consumers across England and Wales.
And what's Waterfall all about?
This is all about helping people see the connection between their water use and the wider environment that the water comes from, and making small adjustments to the way they use water so that we can all enjoy a healthy, thriving environment, as well as the luxury of the best quality water in the world.
Well, there you go. That's a bit of a wordy strapline. Anyway, I'm Mike. I'm here with Karen, and producer Tom's here too. Hi, Tom.
Nothing else to add after Karen's description there. That was wonderful.
Well, seeing as we're turning the tables, I better say, well, we've got an email address if you want to get in touch. It's podcast@ccwater.org.uk. We would love to hear from you. And you can also find us on the socials. Karen, how would you do that?
Well, if you just search for Waterfall, the Water Saving Podcast, it should just pop up.
Yeah, that's close enough. We've got a really good episode here because this is the best of the guests from season 2. We have had a wonderful season, loads of fabulous guests, and Waterfall's only as good as a guest, and we've had some brilliant guests. So we've picked some of the best bits from the guests, and we are going to share them with you over the next 30 minutes or so. Some really smashing clips in here. So it's well worth staying listening to our rampage through our guests, and we cover a lot of ground. Let's kick off. We do enjoy it when we talk about gardens, don't we, Karen?
Yes, I think, certainly Kath and I have got a particular interest in this area and really have enjoyed having the opportunity to talk about our favourite topic.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of clips to kick us off where, ironically, it was me that went to David Clubb's garden to see his sponge garden that he made. And then the clip we're going to hear is he's talking about the motivation and how it's not actually that difficult to do what he did. And then we're going to hear about smart water butts from Nicole McNabb from episode 42, who's from Southern Water. And I've really found that episode fascinating because I learned so much. I knew nothing about smart water butts. So a couple of great clips coming right up.
What I have noticed, so some people on the street are interested in doing something similar. So I've been helping a couple of them. There's a couple up the road who've put in a pond on my suggestion, and they are now interested in putting planters in the front as well. So I think there is some aspect of people learning by seeing and through having those interactions. But it's slow going because I've lived on the street for nearly 10 years now, and there's still really not a huge amount happening in that regard. So I really like the concepts of things like the national park cities and nature neighbours or something. There are some of these kind of organisations or schemes that are trying to get people to learn from each other about how to do these things, because often the biggest barrier is just confidence.
Yeah. How
do I go about doing these things? And if I hadn't had my background probably in physics and engineering, maybe I also wouldn't have had the sort of insight into how to do them. And actually it's incredibly simple, but just having that first, taking that first step is quite challenging. And once you do it, you sit back and you say, well, not only was that really easy, but it looks brilliant. It's a good feeling.
It's absolutely brilliant. It looks really amazing. I'm really interested. I'd love to see this replicated at scale so that the water companies, could look and actually demonstrate the impact, because clearly there would be an impact if this was done, street by street. Yeah, well,
I think the water companies would call this a rain garden, and often local authorities and water companies will team up and they'll have, a £20 million project, and they'll put rain gardens in streets, and they look amazing. There's some in Cardiff, they look really good. Apparently there's a brilliant one in Llanelli, which I haven't seen, but it's supposed to be really good practice. But in a sense, that same benefit could be provided almost for free by doing these sorts of things domestically. And yeah, I'd love Tŵr Cymru to think about a project where they could pay people to go and actually help people do these things, actually put in this infrastructure in people's gardens. Because on the face of it, it's not an expensive way to get some real benefits, and then you're helping nature and you're reducing the water runoff in storms. We're going to be getting more storms, so we need to be thinking carefully about that.
So I've got a water butt that sits in my garden. It's basically just a big tub that collects some water. But I think if that's a passive or standard water butt, what's the difference between that and smart water butts and slow water butts?
I can answer that question. So it turns out there's many more butts than you think there would be. There's a whole variety of them. So with the passive water butts, or the standard water butts, is exactly as you say. It would fill up maybe a 200 litre capacity, and then the next day there would be no capacity to be able to take any more rainfall. It would take a manual intervention from someone to go open the tap and use the water. So what we're trialling is, are there different ways that we can kind of use what is a very acceptable household product that people readily adopt and are fairly cheap, and see if we can try some different models. So the slow drain water butts is where there's a hole around about halfway up, and then it's connected to a kind of a smaller pipe that goes back into the drain. The idea there is for a 200 litre water butt, the bottom 100 litres would be for use for good water efficiency measures in the garden, for cars, however you want to use it. But then the top 100 litres would slowly drain back into the system over around about a 5-hour period. And it just slows the flow of water that's hitting the drains all at once. So it doesn't require any intervention by customers, but it still gives a good amount of water that customers can still continue to use from that water efficiency perspective. A smart water butt is, it's the typical term you hear, smart. You think, what does that even mean? It essentially has kind of a solar panel, a kind of intelligent connector to it that will speak to the cloud and be able to see when a rainfall event is coming, and be able to look at kind of the Met Office or other metrics and say, okay, a rainfall event's coming. This is how much capacity is currently in the water, but we'll drain it down to be able to take as much capacity as required for that rainfall event. Super snazzy. The difference is it is mostly cost, quite a huge disparity of cost. So what we're doing is we're trialing the passive water butts because people still want them. They're comfortable with them. The slow drain water butts and the smart water butts.
Hey, Karen, I know that we've spent a lot of time thinking really clever ways of grouping our guests. So do you want to share how we've come up with the next grouping of guests?
Does it happen to be because they're both called Helen?
Yeah, that's right. We went really super sophisticated, and our next two guests were called Helen. So we have got Helen Roberts from the Met Office, a sociometeorologist, a rare breed, talking about that. And then we've got Helen White from RAP, who is talking about bananas and food waste. Have you seen an impact then since you've started taking a socio-meteorological approach to how you communicate the weather?
Yes, so and I'll caveat this with this is not down to me, and this was in effect way before I started in my role, but we've got some absolutely brilliant research on behavioural response, particularly of the public to our weather warnings. So we know not only how many people in a particular area saw the weather warning, were aware of it, knew what colour the weather warning was, but we get much more richer information in terms of what people actually did as a response to that warning. And by understanding these responses and potentially the barriers to people taking action, we can tailor the messaging much more effectively. And we are just about to start to include action statements on our warnings. So what I mean by that is specific pieces of advice that are based on the particular weather and more explicitly the impacts of the weather that we are forecasting. So for example, if we are forecasting an extreme heat event like we saw last summer in 2022, then we know that there are some types of messaging that are much more effective in terms of those advisory action statements. So for example, rather than saying something which we have often said something like, don't travel unless necessary, it's really important to explain the why behind that statement. So not just the what, but the why. So it might be better to say, using public transport during a heat wave puts you at risk of being stuck on a hot, broken down train, for example.
And that links back to that piece of work that I mentioned around the fact that when we actually looked at giving people the ability to buy closer to their needs and then to judge when to use them, because as well, if you buy closer to your needs, we're not going to get to the spotty brown stage necessarily. So
I want the banana bread.
It's kind of like, so if you buy 2 or 3 bananas, then you'll probably get through them in time. So, and remember, not used in time, biggest reason for banana waste. So all these things are connected. This is how RAP works. It's all rather logical. And then the stuff that's delivered through the Love Food Hate Waste campaign, for example, which is exactly this kind of advice, all has its roots in the evidence and the work that RAP does. Storing them correctly. This is another thing about storing them. Now, bananas pretty much should be the only thing in your fruit bowl, because everything else needs to be pretty much in the fridge. There are very few exceptions in terms of fresh produce, because what we found is that storage in the fridge at the correct temperature will keep them fresher for much longer. Bananas are one of the exceptions. They don't like the fridge. They will go like, not just spotty, but like black very quickly. But, maybe what we need to do is fruit bowls become banana bowls. So store things correctly as well. Then you've got the use up stuff, which you've mentioned. Baking is on my list, but that's where the banana bread comes in. Smoothies, that kind of thing, really, really good for that. The spottier they are, the kind of more honeyed sweetness they've got. So you almost don't need to add anything else to the smoothie to get that real sweetness from them.
One of the big themes on Waterfall is that water and climate change are absolutely intrinsically linked.
You're absolutely right. And I think these next 2 clips will be really insightful, because we're not only making the link between carbon emissions and water use, but we're also really putting front and centre the fact that water is going to be the main way that people experience climate change.
We've talked about tonnes, haven't we? But not really bringing it to life for people. So a car results in about 4 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. Average car, average mileage, driving it around. So that, you've got a family car, you've got about 4 tonnes from that. Then from the heating water in your home, it's about 2 to 3 tonnes, depending what you do. So it's similar magnitude to the car that you drive. That's the emissions impact you're having from that use of water.
Again, I don't think people necessarily make that link, that your car and your showering is roughly the same. Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting stuff there. Right, before we move off of carbon, Karen, you got any other questions for Howard? See that look of slight horror there on Karen's face. Oh, he's asking me stuff again.
Well, I guess the key question that we ask all our guests is around the particular tips that they would share with people for reducing either their water use or carbon.
And of course, climate change is clearly making some of these challenges even greater for some of the communities that you're working with. I was quite surprised, again, with a statistic on your website that 90% of natural disasters are water related, either through floods or droughts. And you've got some really impactful case studies where you've been working with communities in those sorts of situations.
That's correct, yes. So, the climate crisis is most definitely a water crisis. There's many situations where communities now have kind of too much or too little water, whether that be from kind of more frequent or more extreme flooding, which is polluting water sources, or longer droughts, which are drying up the springs. And especially kind of in terms of the drought side, it's now becoming known that a lot more women and girls are walking to hoping to find a water source rather than walking to a known one, because they might not know where they are anymore due to either that pollution or droughts that are occurring. So kind of when we do go into communities to kind of implement resources, we are trying to look at things that would be sustainable and would be able to kind of uphold any future natural disasters, which kind of reduce that uncertainty in the future for them.
You came up with a great quotable line there, Tessa. The climate crisis is definitely a water crisis, and we couldn't agree more with that. And I think that's something that is often overlooked by people, because water is quite blatantly the way in which most people will experience climate change one way or another, whether it's too much, too little, or polluted water sources. And I think the more we can bang on about that, the better, and the more traction we'll get at the need to take action, not just in Britain to make us resilient, but all over the world as well.
Yeah, so we're trying to highlight how our water consumption has increased and changed. For example, back in 1985, we were using 70% less water than what we use now. The average is around 145 litres per person. So we're just trying to highlight how we just use water in our everyday life, whether it is down to health or hygiene, or lots of people with their paddling pools, swimming pools, that sort of thing, and how you can make small changes, you know, those shorter showers, using cups under the tap when you're collecting water, to change some of those habits to help you save water, but not by making big changes and things like that.
Oh, so what tell me that 1970s fact again?
So 1985, we used 70% less water than we do now.
So 1985?
Yeah.
We use 70% less water than we do now?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And do we know that where that increase has come from?
So a lot of it is down to our kind of appliances. So the big power showers that are using, 15 litres per minute, jet washers, the fact that lots of people now do have jacuzzis or swimming pools in their back garden. So generally lifestyle as well. So we find that lots of people are more active, more into their health and fitness. And so there are lots of people out there that shower twice a day, which for me is shocking. But they might go to the gym in the morning and shower and then come home at night and also have another shower. So it's those kind of changes in, I guess, our lifestyle that's making us use more water.
Have you ever heard of this? I got an email from a listener who has an ice rink in their garden.
What?
So they fill up the ice rink at the beginning of winter and then it freezes. This is a North American listener. I'd never heard of that before. So there's a new one for us, right? Your water saving tip. Don't refill your ice rink too often.
That's definitely a new one for me as well.
So Karen, you love it when we go into the garden, and I feel like we've not said the word mulch enough on this episode. So should we just all say mulch a few times? Mulch, mulch, mulch. But so you like it when you go to the garden. I like it when we go overseas and we go and explore water issues in other countries. And we've had a couple of really smashing episodes where we've heard from Malawi and we've heard from Greece.
And it's been really interesting to hear the way everyone is grappling with the challenge that climate change poses.
Yeah, and what I think is really insightful is that in some cases there's massive differences, but in other cases, some of the situations, there's quite a lot of similarities to what we're seeing here in the UK.
Yes, and I think it's really important that where there are learnings to be had, that we're all benefiting from them, because, we all need to come to terms with some of the things that are happening at home and abroad.
You were talking about coping with the tourist season. Mm-hmm. That's something that they're really concerned about in the southwest, because obviously the big influx of tourists, which then put pressure on water resources. So I think that's something that is very similar. How to get through that peak tourist season. How do they cope with peak demand then?
It's an interesting one because there are different challenges in different parts of Greece. So mainland Greece, which is quite touristic as well, has got the option of tankering, of infrastructure projects. In fact, one of the top of the solutions when you look at ministerial directions or ideas that people have is to prioritize some of the infrastructure projects. That was actually, there was something issued in Crete that I was reading about, like completing some of the projects quicker so that they can cope with the tourist demand. But that's a big island that has a lot of mainland, let's say, to that. But a lot of the islands in Greece have always had a massive problem with water supply, and they always had water tankered through big ships and containers.
Oh, so bring it in.
So you bring it in, and you are always aware as a tourist of the water shortage situation on islands. There is actually, through innovation and technology, quite a lot of desalination happening in smaller islands, and there are new desalination stations. For example, the island of Chios is actually one on the list, as well as Crete, of having quite a lot of challenges to look forward to this summer. So they are looking for desalination projects, thinking about how the tourist structures or infrastructure is going to cope with that. Now, this case would be different in mainland. Very, very, very different. And however, in mainland you have other pressures as well as tourism. People forget that Greece actually produces quite a lot of food. The beautiful tomatoes and cucumbers. I mean, just go and walk around the aisles of a supermarket and you will see quite a lot of fruit and vegetable that is imported still from Greece. And that requires water. And within the valleys of these beautiful mountains, a lot of the water that flows naturally actually fuels agricultural economy, and that still needs to be prioritized in many ways. So the challenges are actually multiple at the moment, and I think you might see, as a result, increases in prices of olive oil and fruit, because that's what happens when we have shortage of something and people can't produce. In fact, quite a lot of the land and the soil, you mentioned soil earlier, is not really suitable at the moment for agricultural use because it has dried. Just to put it simply, it's not suitable for cultivation. So the water situation in Greece is quite serious, and the more I read about it, the more I kind of sympathise and empathise with a lot of the people.
In terms of the distribution now, I'm making a hazard a guess. It's cities and it would tend to have access to fresh water in the houses.
Yeah. The cities. So I would say there are about 4 or 5, arguably, major cities in Malawi, who will have access to water. But even then, you will see that the water will only span maybe, I would say, 10 kilometers from the center.
Right, so it's very localized.
Yeah, it's very localized water networks and water distribution. Even the fact that we've got even for the cities where water is readily available, it's still rationed. So you will have days where there's no water supply in the capital city. And this is a real thing.
Wow. So water rationing, that's commonplace.
That is very common. Because what happens is the major cities are some distance away from the fresh water source, i.e. the lake. And keeping in mind, Malawi also has a lot of freshwater springs. So there's a lot of bottled water everywhere in Malawi. Yeah. But what has happened is people find water sources and then they'll build a little fence around it and then they'll put a pump and bottling plant right next to it. And then they bottle the water. And then they're making businesses out of it. And you find that the local community outside of that fence perimeter don't have access to clean water.
So does that build resentment then amongst those local communities?
You know the term that the rich get richer? Yeah. Very much applies to Malawi.
When we look at our listener numbers, which Karen, I know you do incessantly, we see that our episodes where we get out and about tend to be amongst the most popular episodes. And we've had the pleasure of going to Havant Thicket, which is the site of a new reservoir near Portsmouth, which the episode's called Reservoir Dog Walking. It's episode 26. That was a great episode, and you're going to hear a really good clip. This is probably my favourite clip because the person speaking, May, at the end of the first clip you're going to hear, we didn't intend for her to be in the podcast. She was just doing work experience, just so happened to be knocking around and joined us in our fun. And I love her passionate defence of Havant Thicket and why we need a new reservoir. So I love that. And then our second clip, we've got Tony Rees from the Rivers Trust in Wales on our Walking with Water in Wales episode, which is a lovely episode. And Tom, I know you're desperate to say something on Walking with Water in Wales because I know you feel closely associated.
Walking with Water is still continuing, and yeah, it was a terrific chat with Tony, conducted by Leah. Just the insight that he gives here, especially talking about the history of the river, I thought was wonderful.
Well worth checking out that episode.
Yeah, and it really makes clear why we should all become much more water aware.
And I love his tip that he gives in this clip on what we should do to help people in cities understand water resource situations. Because that's the first question my kids always ask if we're going anywhere. is there a cafe? And yeah, so I've looked forward to coming back and seeing the cafe. Forget the reservoir, right? It's all about the cafe. Will there be swings?
There will definitely be some like children's play area, and lots there for the local community.
So there's a lot of you've said the local community quite a few times, which is great that you're talking about people. And what's the view then of the locals of the new reservoir? Are people kind of saying, what are you doing that for? Or are people welcoming it? What's the score?
So I think it's I think most people do agree with it and they think it's a really good idea, but you always get the odd one or two who just fully against it. But most people, I think it's a good idea. It's quite... A lot of people know about it because obviously social media and things like that. So, yeah, I think a lot of people do agree with it, and I agree with it. I think it's a really good way to keep water for the future.
What should I do, Tony? Tell me, what should I do? What can we do to help the river, the environment, nature? Have you got any thoughts?
Well, obviously, really, the saving of water is important from the price you pay on your bill. But then some people can afford to use it as much as they want to, and it doesn't worry them. But I always look back at this on our water supplies. We are living in what the Victorians left us, because I think it was back in the 50s that one of the last reservoirs in Wales was built. But all the rest are from the Victorian age.
Wow.
And, this is important. They did try building reservoirs in England, and some of the thoughts were that you could transport some of the water around the country as wanted, but then to put all the pipes down to transport the water is extremely expensive. So we have to try to save our own water, really. And, I feel that if there was some way that we could, using the power of the media today, have a lifetime camera on all our reservoirs to show people in the cities how quickly our reservoirs are dropping.
That's a good idea.
Until they actually see it, as I said, they walk along the river's trail, well, there's water in it when we're not short of water. But when you come up here, up into the headwaters, and you see the reservoirs and you realise how rapidly they're going down, it makes you realise we are getting short of water. It's very sad because most people will turn around and say in Wales, why are we short of water when we got all these floods in the winter? But a reservoir has got a maximum storage capacity. Therefore, once that's reached, it overflows, and that's what causes the floods down the river. There's no control over it, but there's also no way of saving it. So it's wasted water from our point of view, from the point of view of consumption.
Yes, amazing.
The next two clips we're going to be playing are really insightful because they are sharing experience from two really good campaigns. One to encourage people to avoid flushing wipes down the toilet. And the other one is a long-standing campaign that Waterwise have been running, which is Water Saving Week. So in both of those campaigns, we have some really good insight into what really engages with the public about saving water and avoiding blockages.
And what I love about these clips and these guests is the passion they have for their topic. They just care so much about it. Well worth checking out the full episodes. Episode 33, Bin the White. Episode 34, Water Savings Week. Loads of passion. They really care. And loads of practical tips in these episodes. Absolutely love them.
I think that's a really interesting point though, Jenny, because you've done some work specifically kind of that perhaps younger audience, I think, with Bin the Wipe as well, haven't you, with some YouTube videos?
Yeah, that was another really big success for us. So identifying within the vast array of wipes that are now on the market. So there's everything from baby wipes and cleaning wipes, which most people know about, to really niche things like wipes for pets and wipes for cleaning sunglasses and wipes for polishing car headlamps and all other manner of crazy things. But yeah, makeup wipes were a big known sort of cause of issues. So clearly we understand quite a bit about the sort of people that use makeup wipes. We were able to target our comms to those groups individually. working with influencers as well to really appeal to them, and again going down that education route, because particularly that sort of generation, right, looking at younger millennials, they're so passionate about the environment. The last thing that they would want to do is be causing lasting issues in their community and to the environment. So being able to have that conversation via sort of makeup tutorials on YouTube or via Instagram was really, really helpful for us in launching this campaign and getting that message out to a wider audience.
Oh, I love that. So it's tailored to reach the different parts of the market, as it were. It's not all, I don't know how you reach people who are polishing their car headlights and then going into the bathroom to flush the wipe. That would be different. Hopefully they're not doing that, really.
That was a really helpful piece of learning for us. I mean, not the car headlight issue, but we at the start of our campaign, insight scoping, we're looking at targeting parents with young babies. But actually, if you've ever had it, because they're obviously the one of the biggest consumers of wet wipes, but actually, if you look at the behaviour around changing a baby's nappy, firstly, you don't often do it in a bathroom, and secondly, when you do it, you tend to wrap the wipe up within the nappy. Look, we're both doing the action.
We are
like this. Exactly how to dispose of that. So it is changing the baby's nappy is old school bin the wipes. That's not the problem that we needed to go after. It's all the other bathroom related makeup cleaning, toilet issues and cleaning products that we needed to go after. So that helped us in the early stages of forming the campaign and knowing the messaging that we needed to use. And that's kind of why Bin the Wipe is just such a universal, it just works on lots of different levels, and it's so super memorable. We've had people out in our communities quoting that back to us and talking to their kids about Bin the Wipe, and kids telling off the parents. So that's when you know it's working.
Yeah, I mean, is anybody in the UK actually trialling some of these more innovative tariffs?
There are lots of examples of different tariffs around the world. For example, in New Zealand, which is, fairly rainy country, they have a big excess water use charge. So if you're using a really high level of discretionary water use, you get an additional sort of premium on your bill. And they found it's reduced their water consumption by about 20%. Wow. So that's quite significant. That's pretty significant. And I know in Ireland, they're looking at this as well, this sort of excess water use charge. When it comes to the UK, we did loads of trials about 10 or 15 years ago, and there was a government report, the Walker report, into it as well. But that was before we started rolling out smart meters, which are really a game changer. They're a massive enabler for us to get smarter with tariffs as well. And we've also now got a much better handle on the level of water scarcity we face and the level of water affordability challenge that we face. So it's time to pick up this topic again, definitely, I think.
So that's it. That's our forage through season 2. Lovely to hear those, bringing back very happy memories of the chats we've had with these guys, especially being put down by Chris Philpott for getting it all wrong about Australia.
That gives me a lot of happy memories, that moment.
Yeah, but it does. He put me well in my place, which I deserve to be, by the way. So, but don't forget, if you like what you hear, please do subscribe to Waterfall. You'll never miss an episode. And you know what? We've now got we're approaching 50 episodes, so there's plenty of awesome material there to check in with. My kids listen to Waterfall now. I was really pleased, right? They said, "Daddy, we listen to Waterfall now." I said, "Oh, when did you do that?" "Oh, when we go to bed, it helps us get to sleep." This is the truth. This is a true story. I'm like, I don't know whether to be happy they're listening or a bit insulted that it puts them to sleep. So there you go, serving multiple purposes. Waterfall. You're welcome.
And I think we should take a few moments to thank the guests for coming on and talking to us, because they've all been marvellous. They've all entered into the spirit of it, and it's helping to make the podcast the success that it's been.
Well, there is something uplifting about getting people on who care so much about their topic, giving up their time to help share a little bit about what they do, what they care about, and why it matters. And that has been so good. Don't forget, we would love to hear from you. particularly any suggestions of future guests, you can give us an email or podcast@ccwater.org.uk, and you can find us on social media. Just search our Waterfall podcast and you will see our happy, smiley faces. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. We certainly had fun doing this. So it's goodbye from me, Mike.
Goodbye from me, Karen.
And it's goodbye from me, producer Tom.